my nana passed, and my family flew down from Melbourne to, have my nana's funeral and the wake, to which I was actually able to meet them for the first time. So that was my family on my mother's side that I'd never met. Um, so when I met them for the first time, it was like I felt like I was staring at angels. Their eyes were bright, piercing blue. They were just happy. If you could imagine walking into a room with the sun shining through the windows perfectly on someone's hair and they're just lit up and look like an angel, or I don't know, that's just how I felt when I met them. It
Just like you
was
see in the movies?
exactly right. It literally was a movie scene. It was far too good to be true. And there it was. So I met my family on my mother's side for the first time, and it was amazing. It was incredible. It was a lot of fun, and we had a barbecue. And afterwards, everyone cleaned up. But my brother Matt, he stayed at the table with me while everybody walked to do, clean up and everything like that. He sat with me, and before I go into this story, I've always had a close connection to my brother Matt. But the interesting thing is, he was never in my life. But I would have dreams about him. I would cry. I felt like I missed him. I felt like I needed him. Oh, I'm getting emotional just talking about it. I just
Yeah.
had such a deep connection to my brother Matt, that like I just wish that he lived closer to me, because I didn't understand the connection. I never understood it until that day at my nana's wake.
Welcome to Awakened Minds podcast. Today we speak with my co-host Natalie Russichelli, where she's going to share some revelations she's had over this past week from a psychic reading, and how that has brought about some childhood trauma and how that has affected her in her adult life.
Yeah, so I wanted to share my story. And, first it started off by Jimmy asking if I would share with you all my reading, but then I thought it would be better to kind of share my story. Um, so I did have a reading a few days ago, and it changed my entire life. And I mean my entire life, to the point where I can now move on and create the life that I want, because everything that I needed to know up until this point has now just been resolved. So I'll share my story. Growing up as a child, I felt loveless, hopeless, terrified, scared, and alone. And I just didn't really understand why I felt that way. I would get up every morning and go to school. I'd play with my friends. I would go home, and, I would either go to the park and play in the tree or in the playground, or I would go home and watch TV and go to bed. And again, it was just, I didn't get tucked in like the average child. I sat at the table alone. Um, it's a very lonely upbringing. And if I could describe to you how I felt whenever I would walk into my home, it just felt very lonely, and it wasn't welcoming and warm like my friends' homes would be when I would walk into their house. And I never really understood it. But, for me, that was just normal. That was just my life. That's how I lived most of my childhood life. Um, Fast forward to, say, when I went to high school, I was very severely depressed, very suicidal. Um, I don't want to get too much into all the darkness of it, but that just kind of followed me and surrounded me throughout my life. But there was one thing I do know throughout my whole childhood, is that I always felt protected. And I never really understood that either. So even though there was one aspect of me that always felt like I had to look behind me, or I couldn't go to this person, or I couldn't be surrounded by those types of people, it's because I was very good at reading people, and I just felt safe within my own sort of skin, if that makes sense. And anyway, I found myself being severely depressed, and I decided I wanted to run away from home with my friends. And because they made me feel alive, we would smoke cigarettes, we would go driving in cars with boys, and we just had so much fun. And so I ran away from home at the age of 14. I was not scared for the first time in my life, believe it or not. I just felt so free because I was happy. I was around my friends. I was doing what I wanted to do. And yeah, so I ran away from home, and I got myself into all kinds of situations, which again, it was like I was protected or being guided, because I'd stay at friends' house and they would all be doing drugs, or they'd be, severely wasted. And I would just run away and I would just leave the house and go to a friend's house who I knew would take me in if I showed up, because I know I needed a safe place to go because it didn't feel safe for that area. So I got out of situations very easily. And again, I was always guided. But I'll fast forward till when I was about 17 and I had my very first serious relationship. And, it was love, like it was real love. And, you know, I'd never really understood this kind of emotion before because, again, I've never really had that growing up. So being in this relationship just kind of changed my life. And another thing is that, his family were Christian. So they would go to church, and that's where I learned about Jesus and I learned about the Bible. So then I became, a Christian, and that would be my go-to place to learn about
Welcome
God.
to the
And
club.
right, there you go. Yeah. Right now I'm not a Christian and I don't go to church. That's another story. But at the time, it's what I needed, right?
I'm with you.
Yeah, and so I was with him for 2 years, but I think it was about after the 6-month mark, he started to show abusive signs. He would lock me in my bedroom and he would go out clubbing and he would be cheating on me. He would call me things that I can't say out loud. He would degrade me and just feel like I was an awful person when I just wanted love, and I didn't understand where this was going. But I found out that he was actually doing drugs. And I didn't
Right.
know that until later. And so it just changed his psyche and he would just take it out on me. And again, I just had to find a way out, and I got a job for myself. I'd never had a job. So I was 17 and I was on Centrelink pension. Um, for depression and anxiety. But I found a job. I was like, I want to go get a job because I wanted money. But in reality, I was planning my escape. So I got a job so I could afford a plane ticket so that I could fly back to Brisbane and get away from him. So I did
Mhm.
that. And when I came to Brisbane, I actually went to a friend's house and I stayed with her. And I hadn't seen her since high school. And when I met up with her, she had children. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, I'm only 17 and you have kids. This is crazy.
Was she your age?
Anyway, yeah, we were the same age.
Wow.
Yeah, and I hadn't spoken to her for years. And so when I went to stay with her, there was a few times where she wanted me to look after her child and she would disappear for hours and I didn't know why. Until one day I followed her to see where she was going because I needed to ask her, how do I heat this bottle up to feed your baby? Because I'm only a teenager, I don't know.
Right.
And I found her in a room upstairs shooting up with her
Really?
friends. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was
Wow.
another situation, but I couldn't leave. I couldn't go because I felt like I needed to look after this child.
Yeah. Do you find that I hate to use the word the devil, but the devil shows up as the perfect person.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you need in your life, I need safety. He'll show up as that perfect answer, right?
Mm,
Like it's too
yeah.
good to be true. And then you
Yeah.
find out it is too good to be true,
And it was
right?
too good to be true. And I just got the goosebumps as you said that because there was something in me that needed to go up the stairs and because I can heat up a bottle. There was a microwave, I've done it before, but something in me just told me that I needed to go and ask her for help. Like, how many scoops of formula? But yeah, what I saw was terrifying. And I just kind of shut the door and walked downstairs and I didn't ask any questions. And I stayed there and I looked after a child and they were just high. And I just acted like I didn't really know. I pretended like I didn't see anything, but it was quite obvious. And that was the empath in me
Yeah.
just trying to not, hurt anyone's feelings.
Yeah.
So I stayed there for a little while, felt really guilty that if I was gonna leave, I couldn't help, her children, and it was just an
Mhm.
awful feeling. But one night, this man was too off his head, and I could just sense his energy, and I just knew the voice in my head just said, "Run," and I
Yeah.
ran. And that night, one of my friends there actually got raped by him. And so
Ah.
it's situations like that, I just knew that I
Yeesh.
had to get out at these situations, right? But there was a thing in me that was always telling me to run, like go now. And I would always follow that my entire life. And there was even a situation where I was so close to being kidnapped. Um, my friend's mother, this is just a miracle that happened, showed up behind me, and I just left their house. Had I not known she was actually going to Macca's, but she didn't tell me that. And that was on the way to which direction I was going heading home. And she actually picked me up and she said, "Get in the car now." And it was huge. And so I just know that there
Wow.
was all of these situations in my life that was like, you are guided no matter what
Mhm.
happens in your life. And I also,
Protected by some angel.
yeah, honestly. And it's like I was trained almost by my guides to understand danger. I had to know energies of people, listen to that voice in my head when it was telling me, go left or go right. And so I understood that. But that sort of left me when I found happiness. Um, I met a man who changed my life. His parents taught me how to cook and clean. I had my first child with him, and I was 21 when I had my first, 19 when I had my first child. Um, he was born on Christmas Day, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And
Really?
yeah, yeah. So that was really happy time in my life for about 5 or 6 years. I was really happy, and I just didn't have that feeling of needing to look over my shoulder. I felt safe. I felt created. I felt loved. It was just really, really awesome. And becoming a mother just changed my life again. There was no worries, and everything was great until, a few years after becoming a mother, I was kind of becoming unhappy in the relationship. And
Mm.
so, yeah, things ended, but I'll fast forward to my second child. So I had my daughter, and I lost 2 liters of blood when I gave birth to her. And that was the journey of me really diving deep into who I am and my spirituality, because I thought I was going to die when I gave birth to my daughter. And I was also in a very loveless marriage. It was a very lonely time in my life, very, very lonely. And I don't want to get too much into it, but it really pushed me forward into looking at things like meditation, mindfulness, self love, self awareness. And this was going through YouTube trying to find healing because I was so weak and so drained after losing all that blood and, recouping my energy. I was trying to find ways to heal myself. And that changed my life. But it was at that point where I started to get that voice back in my head that was like, you got to do this, or you got to do that, or don't eat this, you got to do that. And through meditation, I would start getting images and downloads and visions. And that's when I mentioned to you one time, I'm getting these nasty downloads that I don't know what they mean. I feel like I'm getting abused. I feel terrified, mortified, and I don't know what they mean. And I realized that bad had happened in my life, and I couldn't pinpoint what it was. And so, I started this podcast. I would talk to near death experiences. I met you. We started our podcast, and we started our healing journey together. And, we've had many psychic readings, many healings, a lot of fun. It's been really great, fun time with you, Jimmy. I absolutely love it.
Been very interesting. Can I ask you a question though?
Yeah.
Um, so all these hard times, it must be, the same thing as me. They actually were beneficial for you because they brought you to where you are now. Like,
Yeah.
let's say hypothetically everything was rosy and you hit the lottery and life had just been your dream life. Would you be doing this right now?
Oh, definitely not. I'd be probably sleeping with boys, and I probably
Right.
wouldn't have had kids. Like, you know what I mean? I'd probably be maybe a hairdresser or something. I probably would have no real self-awareness, and I would never take any of it back,
I
honestly.
agree.
Yeah. I'm
Same with my
grateful.
life. Same thing with my life.
Yeah,
I think
right.
most people, we focus on that and we don't give credit for what actually comes about from that. The
Yeah.
depression that sets in, um, it leads people to either give up or try harder, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So for you, that's awesome. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so no, that was awesome. Um, so yeah, I went and had a reading. I've had many readings, obviously, on the podcast, and we've shared a few of them, but it was 2 days ago that I had a reading from Mark Ant Hamilton. He's a soul medium, and I'd known him for a few months, and I was supposed to go and get a reading from him a few months ago, but I didn't go because one of my friends had messaged me and he's like, I had a dream, Nat. It was an awful dream. And all I want to say to you is don't listen to any medium or any psychic right now. This is something that you need to hear from me. This was a nightmare that I had. And I was like, oh, that's weird that you say that because I'm just about to go get a reading from a psychic medium. That's really strange that you would mention that. And his name is Darren. He's been on the podcast and he's stayed a close friend of mine as well. But he lives in America and I'm here in Australia, and he's having a nightmare about me and felt the call to tell me this. And so I was like, oh man, I should probably listen to this. This guy's connected to source. He gets downloads and things like that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to this guy. So I didn't go. And I told Mark, look, I can't make it. And he was kind of a little upset. And it was just really strange feeling because I knew deep down that he was a really great guy and there was nothing for me to be afraid about. But
Right.
something made me feel like I couldn't show up. Anyway, my nana just passed on the 28th of August. And that was really sad when I found out, but I know where she is and
Yeah.
I'm at peace with
Sorry for
that.
your loss.
Yeah, no, it's very much okay. She's in a better place and I know exactly where she is. I actually had a visitation
Really?
from her energetically. It was incredible the night before she passed.
Really?
Yeah, it was actually so beautiful. But anyway, yeah, so my nana passed and my family flew down from Melbourne to, have my nana's funeral and the wake, to which I was actually able to meet them for the first time. So that was my family on my mother's side that I'd never met. Um, so when I met them for the first time, it was like I felt like I was staring at angels. Their eyes were bright, piercing blue. They were just happy. If you could imagine walking into a room with the sun shining through the windows perfectly on someone's hair and they're just lit up and look like an angel, or I don't know, that's just how I felt when I met them. It
Just like you
was
see in the movies?
exactly right. It literally was a movie scene. It was far too good to be true. And there it was. So I met my family on my mother's side for the first time, and it was amazing. It was incredible. It was a lot of fun, and we had a barbecue. And afterwards, everyone cleaned up. But my brother Matt, he stayed at the table with me while everybody walked to do, clean up and everything like that. He sat with me, and before I go into this story, I've always had a close connection to my brother Matt. But the interesting thing is, he was never in my life. But I would have dreams about him. I would cry. I felt like I missed him. I felt like I needed him. Oh, I'm getting emotional just talking about it. I just
Yeah.
had such a deep connection to my brother Matt that, like, I just wish that he lived closer to me because I didn't understand the connection. I never understood it until that day at my nana's wake. Um, so my brother sat with me and he just said, look, now I need to tell you something. When you were a baby, you were thrown around the room. Your father would pick you up, and your mother and your father were arguing, and he would just throw you to your mom, and your mom would move aside, and you would just land on the floor and you'd be knocked out. He said, time and time again, I would be just thrown around the room. My brother Jeremy, who's 2 years older than me, he would strangle me. And that's as much as he would tell me about that. But that answered my question about those visions that I would have during meditation.
Right.
And so that was an aha moment for me. And I didn't ask him to tell me. He just had to. There was something divinely planned about that day that I had to know. And so my father and my mother split. And there was a period where me and my brother, Jeremy, and my brother Matt's actually my half brother. So we were only together for a short time, and I was 1, 2, and 3 whilst I was with my brother Jeremy, my brother Matt, and myself. So after the age of 3, my brother Matt wasn't with me anymore. So that's why I don't remember him being in my life, but I do remember the connection to him. Um, and so when my parents split, my mother actually, when I mean split, she just walked out, left me and my brothers. My dad would keep going to work, and I'm in nappies. I'm a baby. I'm hungry. My brothers don't know how to feed me. I'm hungry all the
Yeah.
time. I'm starving. I'm getting thrown around because my brother Jeremy just wants me to shut up. Doesn't want me to cry anymore. And so
Right.
this
He's
would
a
go
child
on.
himself.
Yeah, he a child himself. And so I had to
And he was
forgive
taught
him.
that from your parents as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because there was a lot of abuse.
I
Yeah.
don't think it started with you.
No,
You
it
know what I'm
didn't.
saying? You don't start off doing something like that.
No,
You
you
know, it starts
don't.
off slowly. So he had to experience all that himself.
Yeah, and it's my brother Matt. My brother Matt is, I think, 6 or 7 years older than me. And so he had to witness everything that I went through. But the reason why I have such a connection to him today is because he saved me time and time again to make sure that I was okay, because he had to look after me. And that goes back to me having to watch my friend's child. It was the same kind of energy that followed me throughout my life. But
Yeah.
when my parents split or my mum left and my dad was working, my brother would watch me. My neighbor would see that, there's kids in the house, and, there's screaming, there's yelling, there's commotion going on. So she called child services, and, he told me that we were taken and we were going to be adopted. And so there was a long period of time where we were waiting to be wanted by families, and we weren't wanted. And see, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of this. All I knew is that I grew up with my father and my mother was never around, but I always had nightmares and visions, and I was always terrified. And so if I go back to this reading, actually, I will mention that my dad ended up taking custody of me and my brothers, but not my brother Matt. My brother Matt ended up getting taken custody of a man um, named Anthony, who I just met. um and he lives in Melbourne, and he's also part of my mother's side of the family as well. So he was
Hmm.
adopted. Yeah, so my brother was adopted and he was moved away, so I no longer had connection to my brother, and it was just me, my brother Jeremy growing up. So that's all I really knew. But even throughout my childhood, I just felt so alone and unloved. And, because my father was always working, and, there was this loneliness and this abandonment feeling that followed me my entire life, and uncertainty. And anyway, I'll go back to the reading with Mark. This was just 2 days ago. So he sat down with me and he just knew, like he had this look on his face. He just kind of knew. But he said to me, look, I'm not going to tell you about your childhood, but he drew on a piece of paper, a cage. He wrote down the word trauma to the head, and he showed me it. And I was like, look, I know my brother has just told me everything, and I just found out all about this, and everything makes sense. But I will go back just a little bit before I finish the reading with Mark. I was told by multiple psychics that my head chakra is wide open. And I
Hmm.
always thought that that was because I had a connection to source. But when I saw Mark, he said the reason why my head chakra is so open and there's so much activity there is because I carried a protection energy in my head since I was 1 all the way up my entire, it's still there now, because I had to protect my head. I had to protect myself, and that is the only way I knew how. And so the reason I say that he changed my life, oh, and I've got the biggest goosebumps, is that he clarified and confirmed to me everything that I carried with me my entire life, the feeling of being unloved, the feeling of stress and anxiety, and the clenching my jaw, and the holding weight on my shoulders, feeling like I'm not good enough, and all of this stuff, because he said I carry the energy in my head. And so he taught me how I could bring that energy from my head back into my heart, and bring back all the versions of me that stepped outside of myself because I didn't want to be there to witness, the
Right.
trauma, the shit that was happening at the time. And what's more so incredible is that he got me to pick out 3 tarot cards from 2 decks. And I did that. And he made sure I tapped the decks 3 times and really put intention into the cards that I wanted to pick. And he got me to hold the deck, and I had to go through the deck, and I picked 3 cards, and it was past, present, and future. In the past, there was an airplane on top and there was astral travel on the bottom. And it was like, in my past, that signifies to me, and what I believe now is that I had to leave my body in order to protect myself. And
Right.
I always astral travel. I have memories of these astral travels where I'm literally on another planet. It's incredible. Like, I can't even
Yeah.
explain the colors and the life forms that were on that planet. And then there was another astral travel where I'm literally in blackness, but there's all these little purple bubbles of like jelly-like substance, and I'm just bouncing off these purple substances. um, and
Gumdrops and lollipops out there.
well, I was a child, so I was creating that, right? And I just
Hey,
remember
you
having
were running
fun.
through Candyland.
Yeah, it was pretty fun, I'm not gonna lie, and this happened quite often. um I even had, I was underwater, and I was on this planet where I was underwater in a house, and I was breathing underwater, and I would go to the fridge, grab a snack, sit on the couch, and I'm underwater, and that was just like a place I would revisit multiple times. And
Yeah. I know quite a few people that have that underwater experience that
yeah,
lived in it seemed for months. It was a dream they had overnight, but it lasted for months.
honestly, I could say the same thing. As I'm
Yeah.
reliving it right now, I just know that I was there for a long time. And it's very reoccurring. It's funny because it's like, why can't I do it at will now, but I could do it all the time back then? And so
Yeah. Well, I see from reading the Seth books that you started on. That's what they say Jesus did during his crucifixion was he astral traveled out of his body. He
right.
wasn't there physically in his body. So that trauma is essentially what you did as well,
Yeah, yeah.
to survive that trauma.
Yeah. And maybe that's why I sort of can't do it at will now, because it's like I almost need a trauma or something to get out of my body. But that's just not true, because I have had astral projections, with the meditation that you told me about. So
Well, no,
focus and
what
intention.
what usually happens is that's what it takes, something traumatic to get the first experience. And once you pop out, then you have an easier time of doing that. But you
Yeah.
usually need something like a near death experience or
Yeah.
something tragic.
Well,
You're
see,
not
the
saying
thing,
everybody does, but seems to be.
well, I mean, that's another thing. There's a specific dream that I've carried with me my entire life. And all it was is me as a child. I had a blue flowing dress, had long brown hair because my natural hair color is quite dark. And I can just see myself in third person, just running on a field. I can hear laughter in the air. There's this big, beautiful tree, and it is just alive. Like the grass is swaying from side to side, almost like it's dancing to the laughter in the wind. Like, this is what I imagine every time I think
I've
of this
seen that
place.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very real.
Well, there were 2 psychics who told me that I did have a near-death experience. And I was like, well, I couldn't have, because I don't remember it. And then I would tell them about that dream, and they would say, well, that's heaven. You went to heaven. And, I put 2 and 2 together with all the trauma that I went through. And what my brother told me, it's pretty obvious that, yes, I did have an NDE.
Yeah.
And but it's like, it also answers my question as to why I'm so spiritually driven, and why I'm always looking for answers, and why I want to connect to people on a deeper level rather than just the shallow bullshit that you see. And sorry to say that, but that's honestly been
Yeah.
one of my just pet peeves is, I don't want to hear about your fancy car. I don't want to hear about your new, whatever it is, your shiny new toy. I want to have a deep
Yeah.
conversation. I want to connect with people. I want to learn from people, and I want to expand and grow and things like that. So I really
So
feel
you came
like,
here to heal.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
that's right.
you didn't come here to drive a Lamborghini. You came here to end generational karmic tanglement,
Yeah, that's
you know?
so true.
Yeah,
That
you
just
want to keep
major
coming back here and
goosebumps.
reincarnating this so you can keep living a 3D life, or you can,
Mm,
you know, work on yourself.
yeah. And so I just really felt like it was important to share my story because, people used to ask me when I first started my podcast, like, why do you have this podcast? And I never really used to be able to answer them. But now I can give that solid answer is because I had that near death experience. I had that connection to source that I never understood. I was always divinely protected. My angels are here with me right now, and I'm connecting the dots more and more every day as I continue to meditate and as I continue to hear stories from all of you who share your experiences. And I just feel home, and it's the first time I've ever really felt like, lit up. People would tell me, geez, Nat, you're so lit up when you're on podcasts. There's something about it that just lights you
Yeah.
up. And I'm like, it's
You
because I'm
glow.
home.
Yeah, you glow, baby.
Yeah. And so yeah,
So,
I just wanted to share that Mark was able to help me understand that the energy that followed me throughout my entire life was based on, trauma that I've held with me. I'm 32. So for 32 years, I've had this energy surrounding me of unloved, unwanted, um, hopeless, helpless, scared, looking over my shoulder. I just carry that in my head, in my my crown chakra. And so he taught me what I can do and different techniques on how to bring this energy that's just up here down into my heart, and then down into my stomach, and then down into my root chakra, and just continue opening up. And it's only been a few days, but I've already made that connection, and I just feel so much love. Like, I just feel so happy that I get to say goodbye to the old me and hello to the new version that I get to create from this moment right now. And
right.
so, yeah, that's my story.
So, well, you're not done yet now. You're going to have to teach us what it was he taught you. You want to share with us how you bring everything down to your heart chakra? You know,
Right,
are you
right.
allowed to do that?
So if you'd like to sit up straight and put your legs on the ground and get into a position of, mindfulness, just really come from that heart space. So you want to get your left hand facing upwards and put it on your lap, and then your right hand facing down like limp. So left hand facing up, right hand just down limp. And what you want to do, imagine a color that represents your heart chakra. It could be any color. Mine was green and gold, or was it green and brown, I think, which is very earthy colors. So think of, a color that represents your heart chakra. And when you come up with a color, what you want to do is imagine that color coming in through your left hand, up your arm, into your heart space. And whatever it looks like for you, what I envision is green and brown coming up my heart, creating a vortex around my heart space. And then he said, what you want to do from there is let black out. So bringing in color into your heart, and blackness is coming out through your right hand, because energy enters in through the left and exits through the right. There's an energy circuit that runs through our body. So it begins
Mhm.
with the left and out the right. And you just want to focus on this, morning, night, middle of the day, or just whenever you're feeling, you know, anxious or whatever you're feeling at the time, and you just need to have a breather. Imagine the color in and black out. You're basically grounding, you're letting all the shit out of your heart space, and you're recentering and just getting back into that heart space. And
And your
then he,
intention.
Yeah, that's right. And that's all you have to do. And obviously breathing in as well. And so that's what he taught me. But when we were doing this exercise, it didn't work right away. And what he had to do for me, because I held 32 years of my energy, I was not connected to my heart, and I didn't know that. I always thought I was connected to my heart, but I just wasn't. I was connected to logical protection, if that makes any sense.
Right.
So he went and grabbed a stick, a really, really long stick, and you can hold a stick if you can't get outside, or maybe you might be allergic to grass, whatever the reason is, you can hold onto a stick to ground as well. So he held onto the stick with me as kind of like a conduit or like a conductor, because he felt like I needed that extra pull. And the minute he did that, I was able to get the heart flowing through my head, through my heart, sorry, the energy flowing through my heart, because it kept going back up to my head. And even he clairvoyantly saw that, and he was like, okay, this is not working. So he did everything he could. So he got the stick, and that worked as well. So if you're trying to get the energy coming in through your arm, through your heart, and out your arm, and you can't quite visualize it in that space, then you need to go out and either ground or, hold on to a leaf. You can get a green leaf and hold it in your left hand as well.
Yeah, I was always told to imagine roots coming out of your feet as if you're connected to the earth. Like I walk around barefoot a lot just because of that. But yeah, you can
Right.
actually, if you do that, envision yourself rooted to the ground. And you can
Yeah.
do that anywhere. You can do that in your house too. You don't have to be outside. It would help if you don't have rubber soles on your shoes. You know what I mean?
Well, see, that
It is an
technique
electrical
that
connection.
Yeah, that technique that I just showed you, that's not actually grounding. That's just bringing in energy into the areas that you need it. And for me, I needed it in the heart, because energy is always flowing through the left and exiting through the right. That's just one way to get energy flowing into whatever chakra that you need. So you can bring energy in through your left arm and into your sacral chakra or your throat chakra or your crown chakra, wherever it is that it's needed. Um, but to ground, he said, just envision a straight white light going into the ground and up to source. And basically just envision that as many times that you can a day. For me, I kind of create like a torus field, like similar to what you said. I'll imagine my legs grow into the roots, like my legs are the roots of the tree. And then
Mhm.
from the tree will circle up a big white light that will come down in through to my chakra, and that would go all the way up into high heavens and back down. And so I was embodying earth and source in one, and that was grounding me in heaven and in earth. So that's another way you can do that as well.
Right. So yesterday, let me ask you, you were getting a lot of channeling and messages you were doing. So how did that all start?
Yeah, so Mark also told me that when you meditate, it's really important to do visualization, because he knows how important it is to me to connect to my guides. And so I'm very good at that because I'm a daydreamer. I've been daydreaming my entire life. I've always been in my head. So I'm very good at visualization. And so I told him that I wanted to become an open channel. I wanted to channel Pleiadians because I was told that that's who I would channel once I find the connection. And so he said, yes, visualization is huge. So I did that. I meditated and I visualized that I was channeling. But something else happened. It was like a voice or an inner knowing was happening through me. And I felt the urge to grab a pen and write it down. And it was just out of this world. It was like, we've been waiting for you. Do you remember what it said? I've got it written down on a piece of paper. We've been waiting
I
for
I
you.
do I
Yeah.
do remember your accent changing. I heard
Yeah,
that
that's
one. I was like,
right.
"Whoa, girl!"
And see, when I sent you that voice recording, I was actually joking around saying, this is what it sounded like, Jimmy. But even then, it's like I was channeling, and it was that simple.
Yeah.
I just had to have the intention, and the words just kind of came out of my mouth, and it's in another tone, and it's not my
Oh yeah,
tone. Right.
yeah, yeah. There's
And
no
so,
candy coating anything. It's really direct and monotone, and
Yeah,
Like there is
visualization
no
is everything.
there's no bullshit in what they say. It's just all truth.
Yeah, and it was third person as well. It
Yeah,
wasn't me speaking, it was third person. Like, we are here
right.
to communicate with you. We've been waiting for you for such a long time. And it wasn't even those words, this is me talking, because when I'm channeling, it's not me. Um,
Right.
and so this is just now happening because I've decided to make that conscious um, connection to do that. And so I've still got a little bit to learn. I haven't asked who they are,
Oh,
although
yeah.
the word Zohar keeps popping up, and I don't know if I'm making it up at this point or if it's legit. Um,
Well, you
but
don't
yeah,
remember the Zohar machine from that movie Big?
no.
You ever saw that movie Big with Tom Hanks? Where he was a little kid and he anyway, what he did was he went to a Zohar machine. It was a little tarot card machine he put a quarter in or something and he asked to be big.
Oh,
But that's what was
right.
written over top of it. That's the only
No
thing I ever remember
way.
seeing that. Yeah. It
Oh,
was a
isn't that
tower reading booth.
interesting?
That's the only other
Wow.
place I've ever heard of that word before.
And I just got the download that it's literally me talking to my higher self and getting guidance from my higher self, because that's what the Zohar is, right? The
Mhm.
one that gives the knowledge and the guidance to the little boy he turned into a man.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He had like a turban on his head and he would spin like this and
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Wow, there you go. That's so interesting. I'm gonna
Could
have to
be.
look more into that, because I was like, there's no way I'm using that name. What is that? And that name came about when I woke up from a sleep. Because when I wake up, when I have a dream, I don't remember the dreams, but that moment between wake and asleep where I'm just coming out of sleep, that's when I get the conversations playing out, and I'm like, what's, like, slow down. I can't understand what you're trying to tell me. I don't know the messages. But one day it was like Zohar. And I was like, what the fuck is Zohar? I don't know what this is. So I Google it, and it's literally this Jewish mysticism book. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's a book called the Zohar, and it's literally a book written by men, but it was created by spirit. So it's actually not meant for people on earth. It's meant for spiritual beings to understand spiritual things. And I'm just now learning about it, so it's really hard for me to explain what that means. But just go onto YouTube for those of you who are interested in Jewish mysticism, because there is so much about, the Zohar that is actually going to change your life. And I
Yeah.
do feel guided to learn about it. So I did watch some videos on YouTube, and I was actually blown away, literally blown away.
I've actually this might be pertaining to this, but I did see when I look into that secret space program stuff that the German and the Jewish nationality, from what they say, is the most pure as far as like not intermingling with other races. So they're the most genetically pure going back to when we were first created. And that's for some reason that's why ETs come and dealt with them is because they weren't mixed with the rest of the races as much as ours was because in Jewish in their religion they don't intermingle with other religions and other people,
Yeah, that's true, isn't
so
it?
their DNA is pure. There's something to do with that. Their DNA is more
Mm.
pure than most people would be on this earth.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting.
Maybe there's something there going back to why they have Jewish mysticism because they,
Mm.
that stuff gets passed back down from generation to generation. And if it's passed from this race to that race, things get mixed up like what they call a grapevine. Pretty much like the
Mm.
Bible is now. It's a bunch of everybody throwing things
Yeah,
in there.
yeah,
And I don't
that's
know. I'm
right.
thinking out loud. I don't know.
Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting because my mother
You can
always
cut that
said that
out.
my father was a Jew. And I didn't
Really?
know if that was quite literally, but then she said, yes, he does have Jewish in him. So I was like, oh, okay. So
Yeah.
Still something that I don't really know if it's true or not, but if it is, that's quite interesting as well.
Well, you're definitely being guided towards that. I mean, even not knowing that but you started an NDE podcast before you knew you had one.
I
So
know.
you knew something deep down inside and
Yeah.
you were able to trust your intuition, even back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
That's huge. Most people don't do that.
I knew
And
I
that's,
had intuition even when I was a child. I just knew things. I just knew how to
yeah,
get out
but
of
you trusted it and you
situations.
went with it.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right.
Everybody gets those messages, but then they get that little part of them that says, that sounds silly. And they
Mm.
don't pay attention to it. And
Yeah.
then years down the line, they wonder why you're not living your dream. Well, you never
Yeah.
paid attention to your guides telling you where to go. You
Right.
know, your
That's
analytical
exactly
mind
true.
took over and left you here, you know?
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's like, okay, I've had a podcast. Oh, I started a podcast. I didn't know that I had an NDE, found out later. Everything started to make sense to me. But not only that, I get to learn how to connect back to my guides. I get to learn how to create a life for myself. I get to understand and know about the law of attraction because all my life I didn't know. Like, I have no foundation. I wasn't shown, how to go to work, or I was never guided. I have no direction. I'm basically at 0 points. And right now that I've had an insurmountable amount of healing, I am actually able to create the life I want using everything that I've learned in such a short time. And so I can manifest, I can change my thoughts, I can get up and be happy knowing that, holy shit, I got through 32 years of life not knowing why the fuck I'm even here in the first place. And now I'm like, oh, that's why I'm here. I'm going to change lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm going to tap in and share with people how to follow their own intuition, how to listen to that inner knowing, how to understand, what certain things means. Because when I'm talking to someone, I just start saying shit that I don't even really know I had the capacity to share. I'm giving out information, advice, and things that I didn't think I had the vocabulary for. And it's just when you follow that inner knowing, you are going to be guided and doors are going to open and people are going to come into your life, and you just got to keep going with that energy and just see where it takes you, because I know it's going to take me places.
Yeah, when you're living your dream, the universe will come back and touch you. It will come
Yeah.
back and help you towards your dream.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're living your nightmare, it'll help you come back and relive that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think God is both positive and negative energy, and you have the choice to decide which reality you want to experience every
Yeah.
day, moment
Yeah.
to moment. You decide that.
Well, there was another word that I channeled. I woke up. It's usually when I wake up, I've got a word. It's either one word or a sentence, and I'll write it down now. Um, Opposite was the word. That's all it was, just opposite. And this was actually quite a few months ago, and I'm only just now understanding what it means with the word opposite. You envision a line. On one end it says love, on the other it's hate. If you have hate towards something, it's probably because you have so much love towards that, and that person's conflicting your love towards that it's making you hate that person. So all you got to do is go the opposite end of that emotion and know that it's coming from a place of love. Is that
Yeah,
kind of making sense? It's like I'm trying to make
absolutely.
sense. Everything has an opposite, good, bad, cold, hot, up, down. There's opposites to every.
Duality.
Yeah, but the truth is, it's all on the same line. It's all, everything has its truth, whether it's good or bad, happy or sad, hot or cold, it still has the same line. It's still the same energy. So all you need to do is transmute from that space back to love, back to light. So
Right.
for me, my life was just a series of, being pushed down, pushed around. It, all of that kind of energy followed me. But now I have the opportunity to either let it take me down and keep me down and keep going, oh, my life was so shitty. I had a really bad time. Or I could go, wait a minute, that's
Right.
not my life now. I can change it. I can now come from a place of love and forgive that part of my life, of the people in my life, and transmute it back to love because they didn't know any better. My parents probably didn't know any better. And my brother, he was just he just wanted me to be quiet. He didn't want me to cry. He didn't know any better at the time either. And so when you
Well,
have
all these
traumatic,
things probably happened to every one of them growing up. Same thing.
exactly.
They just didn't break that cycle,
Yeah, that's
And
right.
that's what you're doing now for all this work. It's
Yeah.
breaking
And
that cycle.
my
So
brother
your children
isn't.
don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh, I could just forever
That's
goosebumps.
that's what they talk about, generational entanglement, you
Yeah,
know? And
yeah,
that'll keep going. That'll go through your grandchildren and on until somebody deals with it.
yeah. Do you
It'll
know
come
what's
back in your next
really?
life,
Yeah.
you know?
You messed up, Nat. You forgot something, so here's your
Yeah.
grandchild and deal with that.
Yep. See, there's people they avoid. It's like the ones that always want to stay positive and keep everything negative. Well, you're avoiding it. And how do you actually deal with something that you avoid? You don't. It just sits there and it festers.
Yeah, yeah,
So I mean, for me, just the last 6 months and watching what you've done with the changes that you've made, it's been all inspiring. For real.
yeah. I really do feel like a
It's
changed
been my
person.
honor watching all this.
Oh, thank you, Jimmy. Oh, so much love for you.
Well, and you're the one person I love telling you I told you so.